So, The Cabin in the Woods from 2012. It's kind of an older horror movie, and since it's the month of October, I thought I'd delve a little bit into some movies that are horror related, but also related to Jordan Peterson and the grand narrative he talks about. And I'm going to talk about the ending, so this might be considered a spoiler sort of review. I'm not going to talk about the whole movie so much as really the ending, because I think that's what really confused me a little bit for a couple of years, actually, as I thought about it here and there. And then as I got into Jordan Peterson, I started to understand the ending a lot better. So just as to give you some frame of reference, if you've never seen the movie, it is about a cabin in the woods, obviously, but it's about 5 friends go for a break at a remote cabin where they get more than they bargained for, discovering the truth behind the cabin in the woods. So that's the little one-sentence setup for the movie there on this IMDb site. I would like to play the trailer, but every time I play a trailer in any of these reviews, the review gets flagged for copyright, and then I have to, appeal that and so forth. So I'm not even going to bother with the trailer. There's some notable actors or people you might have seen in other movies, like Chris Hemsworth is in this film. The movie is sort of a movie about horror movies and about, of course, human nature. So it's sort of like there's a meta narrative going on, because as they get to this cabin in the woods, it sort of is the classic setup of teenagers in this creepy setting. You start to see there's another setting that's another story taking place over and above that story about the teenagers. And you're introduced to these characters that are in suits and ties, and they're sort of like scientists and engineers, and they're working in some kind of secret lab or secret facility that seems to be underground or in a mountain or something. And they seem to have access to some pretty high-tech equipment. One of the things they set up for this group of teenagers is this invisible dome that shields the cabin in the woods from outsiders, but also it keeps the insiders, the people in the cabin, from getting outside the realm of this territory of the woods that they're in. So there's some kind of sci-fi type of tech going on here, or supernatural mixed in with sci-fi, because as the movie progresses, you'll see that they sort of build a commentary on other horror movies. So there's the zombie genre, so you're going to see zombies come up. You're going to see, what's it called? The kind of Ring, the characters from the Ring. And you're going to see that this scenario of human beings trapped by or being persecuted and hunted by monsters is going on not just in the cabin in the woods, but it's going on in different places all over the world. And you're going to see this from the perspective of these engineer types and scientist types who are conducting what looks to be like some kind of experiment. And as the movie goes on, you're going to see that what they're actually doing is trying to set up a sacrifice to some ancient god or set of gods. I forget if it's one god or multiple gods. And so the point is that they are trying to, there's sort of a set of people who's responsible for conducting the sacrifice in each part of the world. And the point of having the multiple sites is that if one site fails to achieve the sacrifice, the human bloodletting, then another site perhaps won't fail and the end of the world will not happen because the sacrifice was successful. So at the very end of the movie, what I thought was very confusing for me at first was that there's 2 characters from the main cast left. And this is where it's going to get kind of spoilery. If you're not into a spoiler review, then I guess you would not listen to this part. But so there's 2 characters left, and one is the stoner, and the other, I forget who she is. I forget the actress's name, but it's a female character. So there's a man and a woman. There's your Adam and Eve, and or your pair, your Cain and Abel. And there's the stoner who can see more than what's literally in front of him. He has access to the possibilities, right? And they actually find a facility that is actually full of horrific possibilities. It's like every known mythical creature and like a werewolf, some crazy giant bats and vampires and all kinds of different creatures are locked up in this kind of prison or laboratory where they are used in these sacrificial sites like the cabin in the woods. They're released on victims to conduct the sacrifice to the ancient god. And so now there's this pair left, and they're sort of, time is running out for the sacrifice to take place. And Sigourney Weaver, I think, makes an appearance here, and she says that she explains to them that all about the secret facilities, and she explains how, there has to be a sacrifice or else the end of the world will happen. And, if you don't kill her, like if the stoner doesn't kill his friend there, or if she doesn't kill him, then everybody will die. So they better just, kill one another, or have one lay down their life for everybody, or else the end of the world will happen. And so when they choose not to kill each other, and then this giant god emerges and the end of the world commences. And for the longest time, I thought that was the wrong way to think about the ending, the wrong way to have an ending. Like, I thought if they chose not to murder, if they chose the ethical thing, I thought that was the trick, that the ancient god was having these sacrifices take place, for all this time, thousands of years. And it's only when humanity learned that they didn't have to do the blood sacrifice, that maybe the god would change the rules of the game and say, look, you finally learned the lesson after all these years of making the blood sacrifice, what it was really all about. And so I thought having the god emerge when they did the ethical thing by not killing one another was an incorrect way of ending the movie. But then as I listened to Jordan Peterson, I started to understand that the idea of the sacrifice is essential to reality and to living in reality, and to understand and thrive in reality, you need to understand the idea of sacrifice. And the blood sacrifice, as brutal as it is, was conducted, let's say it's Jesus Christ, that was the blood sacrifice, and it was the last human blood sacrifice that was necessary or required. And that's the key to the movie, is to understand that you do need to have the sacrifice, and by not doing the sacrifice, they ushered in the end of the world. And so by not carrying over that lesson of how important the sacrifice is, that is then the end of the world. And that's a grand scale thinking of it. But it's if you put it to a micro scale, to your own life, if you don't understand the idea of sacrifice, if you're not willing to do whatever it takes, ethically speaking, within the rules of the game, to succeed and to thrive in the reality that's set upon us, and then you're not going to succeed. You're not going to thrive. You're going to be crushed by reality, because reality, as it's revealed to us and as we apprehend it, requires sacrifice. And that's one of the ingenious and brilliant ideas that Jordan uncovers in the Bible, in the biblical narrative, all the different sacrificial themes and how all of it is applicable to us today in the modern world, because it's all about human nature. It's not about necessarily about a specific metaphysical and historical time and place, although that's part of it, obviously. But there's sort of a bigger picture and a bigger theme that makes it applicable to each individual human being throughout time, past, present, and future. And I think the movie touches on that very well. That's what ultimately the whole movie has, this theme of sacrifice. And if you like Jordan's take on it, you might like what this movie has to say about it. You might not like what this movie has to say about it. I'm not sure, of course, because this is carrying it into the horror realms, and it is a little bit different, obviously. But I think if you look at the general idea of sacrifice and what a movie can say about it and what a horror movie can say about it. This is a really cool meta-narrative. I think the movie is very fun, the way they kind of talk about the genre and the various different types of horror movies. And I think it's a very smart movie. Certainly outsmarted me for a long time in the way I was thinking about it. And Jordan Peterson, the lens of Jordan Peterson sort of helped me understand why the ending was the way it was. The sacrifice was necessary so that the world would continue going on and the world would not end. If you like these sort of psychological movie reviews or takes on movies that sort of involve the Jordan Peterson lens, this so-called Petersonian review, give this video a like and subscribe. Thank you.
Well, there's a guy who's got a little YouTube channel, and I've been sending a lot of people his way, Node in a Network, and he's basically been reading all of the stuff in the footnotes of Maps of Meaning,
where we're all sort of plugged in as like nodes on the network.
Node in a network, there's a good username.
A node in a network.
The wrong model, because you're at the center of a network. You're a node in a network.